Hello and welcome to this week's video. This week I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. It basically all started out by a process of tidying up my crafting space. As you're probably aware, I've probably mentioned it before, I have only got a small corner of a room with a desk, and all my spares and paints and everything else has to be in this one area. So I was having a bit of a sort out at the weekend, and although my area is very small, like everybody else, I have a little collection of what do you call it? A pile of shame, things that I've bought along the way and half started, or things that I've not even looked at, and they've just been sitting there waiting to become a project. So I thought, as part of this tidying up process, I'd use some of these bits and put something together, and just show you how, how I look into doing what I'm going to do. Now, as I say, it is going to be a bit different because I literally am flying on the hop. I haven't thought about what I'm going to do other than what two or three of the key items suggest. And the main one being this. I can't remember where I bought it. If I do find out, I'll put a link in the video. But obviously, it's a fuel dump. Now, I must have bought this in mind for my odd end battles. So I thought what I'd do is put it together as a bit of scatter terrain. I've got a bit of board that I've obviously cut at some point and then never used. So I thought, well, rather than throw it out, I'm going to use that. And I'd make a small fuel dump area. I suppose what it could do is become a target to aim for on a battlefield, to secure it. One of those type spots. So anyway, I'm going to bring you along, and let's see where we go with it. One thing I do want to do is to incorporate some of the other little bits I've got around, like this century box that I've painted and then left. And then I've got the little road barrier that went with it. And then I've just come across some crates and barrels that I've painted up and then left to one side, so I'll probably use them in this one as well. But I think I'll start by getting these oil drums primed and ready for the next stage. I've just come across some wire mesh that I must have bought for some project, I don't know what, but I'm thinking now that I might cut this into strips to form the edge around the outer part of the fuel dump. So I'm going to cut these into strips and then I'll bring you back. Right, I've cut some strips out of my mesh. And what I'm thinking is that I'm probably going to go with them. I've bent them to shape, but I've got to find a way to seal it down at the moment. But something like that for the outside edge. So I'm going to have a look at how I can seal this to the baseboard, and then I'll come back. Well, this is the first time that I've actually used this, but I bought it some time ago at a local pound shop, and they'd got several tubes reduced. I mean, it was still, I think, about £4 or £5 at the time, but I think it's a lot dearer than that. But I've tried some of that to initially put the fence in place with some matchsticks as the posts. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wait for that to go off before trying to reinforce it a bit more with perhaps some plaster or even some more of the no nails. But as you can imagine, it's fairly wobbly at the minute, so I need to give it a bit of time to go off. So And the little bits that you can see where it's hit the fence, I'm not unduly concerned about that because, as I said, I'm going to go for this in a winter setting anyway. So we'll be adding bits of snow and ice anyway. So that could just be snow and ice on the fence. So that's not an issue. But I'll let that to dry, and then I'll come back and show you how I'm going to just slightly reinforce that. Right, I'll let that dry for a little bit, and then what I've gone for, on the inside, I've used some old Jarvis grey tarmac scatter, and around the outer side of it, I've used some Serious Play white sand snow, which is quite crystal-like. Now, it's still very wet and I've got to let it dry before I shake it all off. But you can see how that's going to start to look. Right, the main base piece has dried out quite a lot. I'll probably make some adjustments to it. I don't know whether I've got a slight bowing on it, so I might have to tape up the back, but we'll see how that goes. But I'm going to come back to that. What I've done now is I've primed the ammo dump scoop, and I'm now going to just dry brush this and try and bring the individual barrels out a bit more. I'm going to use Army Painter's Filthy Cape initially. Right, just get a little bit on the brush, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go across the barrels with this one. This is going to give them a little bit more of a dirty look as well, like they've been stood there for a while. They've seen action, been on a few different battlefields. There are a few cases here, I'll go back over them later. Right, what I'll do next when I've got this on is, perhaps apply another grey, perhaps ash grey, Army Painter ash grey, and then look at trying to pick out the rims with either spaceship exterior or even a bit of Army Painter gunmetal on these on the rims and the edges. And then the next thing to tackle will be the actual camo net that's over it. And I'll probably just go for a bit of a basic camouflage type finish on that. And I'll bring you back when it's done. As you can see, there's been a bit of a change. The original foam board was just starting to bow too much, so I thought I might as well start afresh. So I went with some harder plastic. And that's allowed me as well to upgrade the centre and put some heavier grade grit in there instead to give it a bit more body. And then the next thing I've done is obviously stuck the oil drum dump in place. And then I've added this Days Gone Lado model, which I've completely revamped, repainted it, took all the back end away, and then used some coffee stirrers to make up a flat back truck, so that I could add these crates and oil drums, and it's very effective for size, really. I mean, it goes well with 28mm, I've got some work to do on the compound, but I'll come to that. In the meanwhile, though, I've started work on a small companion piece, and I thought I could put on the barrier and my little sentry box, and that can just be pushed on the front. I mean, it can go without it, but it just gives a bit of choice. And the other thing I thought about using is these tank obstacles that I've got left from bolt action. And then what I thought I could do is I could use these down the sides and along the front, just to make it look a little bit more defensive. And then obviously what I'd have to do is grit it up to look the same as the base. I mean, obviously I could add a few more packing crates and things like that just to make it look a bit more interesting on the way into the main base. Right, well, as you can see, I've brought this one back together again now on the firmer base. I've set all the posts in place, and I've also added some snow and ice to the surface. I've left the outsides at the minute largely white, but I will be sprinkling some snow on that. And then I've also been taking a look at the additional front piece that I talked about. Now I've added the parts now, and I've put on the concrete blocks and gritted it up to look the same as the other piece. Obviously I've got to finish it off with a snow effect, and that'll bring the two together. But you know, just thought this is going to give it that extra element, because it can either be a neutral fuel dump, or by putting that on the front, it's a German fuel dump. You know, so it just gives me different alternatives for how I'm going to use it on the table. Now, the next thing I thought about doing, I thought, well, I've got a neutral dump, I've got a German dump, I might as well have an Allied dump. So why not make this a 3-part set? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dress up this other piece so it works for the Allies. And then they can, you know, swap, mix and match them. So what I need to do now is to work on this third piece and do something similar that I've done on this second one. Right. I've started work on the second front, and I've started by adding these tank blocks, you know, similar to what I've done on the first one, and I've took them right round the front, you know, just to make it look more protected. And obviously what I've got to do now is give it a prime, so I'm going to be using this Army Painter paint. And the other thing that I've added to these are these little triangular type barrier pieces. And I thought what I'd do with these is I'd string some barbed wire across them, you know, just to give it that extra level of protection. Right, well, what I'll do is I'll get this done and bring it up to the same level, and then I'll bring you back. Right, I've now put the finishing touches on. I've added a few tufts and some rust effects on some of the wiring and the fencing, and the odd smudge on a barrel as well, just to try and make it look even more lived in. So I'll just give you a quick look at it as it is now. I've not really added a great deal of loose snow. I've got away with using some spaceship exterior by Army Paints and some brilliant white as well. And then, as I said, to put in front of that, if it's a German fuel dump, I prepared this piece. Again, it's using up all the little odds and ends that I've, had left over from different projects, and little bits that have been sat there waiting to be built and used. Managed to use up the rest of my tank blocks and things as well on these. And that's that one. So that would go on the front if it was a German fuel dump. Without it, as I said, it's a neutral fuel dump. And then I built a separate one, a little bit more minimal, with a sandbag square. I've added a few car tyres as well. Picked out some of the details of the bullets on the edge of the box. And this one I'd be using if it was an American or British. But as I'm thinking of using it in the Battle of the Bulge, it's going to be largely German or American. But that gives me my three choices. Right, that's the end of this week's project. I hope, if nothing else, it's perhaps given you a bit of inspiration for something that you could do with some of the spare bits that you've got kicking around. And if there's any questions you want to ask about it, or any suggestions, please do drop them in the comments. I always do reply. And I'll leave you with some photographs. Bye.